Yeah. Hmm. Okay, so hi everyone. It's always amazing to stream and transmit from another space. It's weird. It's interesting. One moment you're playing with the kids, and next thing you know, you're in Spain with people from all over. So I wanted to maybe actually start simple today, just to help a lot of you situate um, yourself within the energy. I want you to consider that I'm really just one of the people who's doing this around the world. It's just that I've been doing it for quite a while, and yeah, a lot of the formats that have spread across the world did come from the work that had come through me. So I've been doing this for about 17 years. Um, it's a long time when you facilitate this often several times a day. It's just so much is happening. So often I don't know how I was able to actually survive because of the intensity. So in fact, the way things are now, it's actually quite soft and refined. But when a lot of this started, it's very raw and really powerful and really strong. But I'm sure a lot of people are in their own strength now, and you want to enjoy that, when you're about to dive in, you're in it. Because a lot of the work that I do is actually also to help people who have been in it really deep for a long time, to also help to surface and to climb back up. So this is a training that you're attending, and I guess it's my responsibility to at least give useful tips and information that could be uh, yeah, productive for you in the long term. So a lot of people ask, like, why is this happening? Where is it coming from? Um, it's never coming from the one holding the space. Like, we're very careful that the energy is always coming from inside, and that is definitely healing, in that sense that everyone is looking for the answers always from the shop, from the internet, from other people. This energy is meant to liberate people. It's meant to bring independence, which is one of the greatest gifts you can give to people. So taking care that when you speak about this, that when you open the space, it's all about taking responsibility, that you have everything you need already inside you. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my screen. I like to draw when I'm presenting. It's helpful to match the sound and the image. Okay, wait, let me get rid of the. Oh no, no, it's okay. Oh, my pen's not working. Okay, no, it's good. I've since I've been training, maybe about 15 years back, I've always used the visual. So I would draw on big pieces of paper or cardboard. So we would ask maybe the question, where is it coming from? The work that I do is called inner dance. Some people call it now Kundalini activation, life force energy, and so on and so forth. Like, through me, it came about as inner dance. So when people experienced what they were calling the divine or the cosmos, the question is, why is it happening? What is it, and where is it coming from? Now, um, in my experience, there were several factors that led to the experience. Just need more space there. Um, the first could be that I was speaking to a spirit that I could just call the mother. The mother spoke to me and asked me to find the conditions. Um, And upon listening to the mother who spoke many symbols, many messages, I did follow her. I ended up in this, just I need more space. I ended up in this interesting position of like living on an island. I'm such a bad artist today, but this is an island. This is pretend. This is a coconut tree, and this is sand and water. I lived in an island for 2 years, living mostly on a coconut diet and partly in a breatharian lifestyle where I wasn't eating or even drinking anything anymore. So a lot happened there. That was my workshop. People go to trainings now and workshops, but for me, um, there was something about that experience that brought about my inner dance process. Okay, so if I was to list the factors that I would study in the long term, there's something about nature. This energy is coming from nature. Nature is speaking to us, asking us to go back to her. Um, there was something about solitude or becoming alone that was also very important, particularly in the way I experienced a lot of shifts in terms of language. Um, there was a lot of spiritual synchronicity where everything was just connected, and I believed that everything was one. Um, actually, for me, one of the most important things that actually brought about the inner dance was a particular emotion that I would just call forgiveness. Maybe I'll take away the screen just so I could speak about this for now. Um, I grew up with a lot of hardship. I had a difficult relationship with my dad. My dad was, severely traumatized when he was young. He was shot when he was a child. They were playing with a gun during World War II, and he basically got hit here. And then the bullet exited this part of his head. So he lost an eye, and that led to him holding on to like a lot of fear and anxiety and emotion. And I kind of absorbed that. So I was abused when I was young. And I've always been small as a person. So growing up, I was bullied in school a lot. And it my body could take it. It didn't really bother me. It's just that there was a lot of absorption, so much pain, like the pain body of the world. I felt like I was taking it in. So this for me is an important starting point because when you look at the way the journey process is designed of asking people to enter into these brain body states. Um, okay, let's make some room. When you study all the elements, say having someone lay down, going into a horizontal position, there are many factors there that um, bring together these that I outlined, whether it be solitude, speaking to the mother, nature, spiritual synchronicity. The forgiveness, I wanted to think about this today because I'm dealing with a lot of conversations around the world right now where people are dealing with a lot of emotions. Um, for me, inner dance was to do with the ability to take in the things of the world that normally we are not able to receive. You can think of them as judgments, resistances, projections. Um, something will happen to us when we die. All right. Now, when we were born, something happened to us that's quite the opposite of what would happen to us in death. When we're born, maybe we were in the womb, and then when we come out of the womb, instead of the world like coming into us, it goes out of us. There's a way in which we project outwards in birth. What used to be the self, now we start to store parts of ourselves into the other. So it's like the becoming other of the self. Yet in death, it's like the other becomes the other comes into the self. There's like an inloading of the world into, so in my solitude, like alone, I basically allowed it, the thing that we don't normally allow in, and I allowed it to come inside me. It's like I died. And everything outside, like I found it inside, basically. So for me, that's synonymous with forgiveness. It's like this belief structure that everything happens for a reason. And then all of those parts of everything, they collapsed inside of me, where I became just one. I became one being, one planet, one day. I became one, one space, one time. So I would study the inner dance today with you as to what this means, and to understand the way we facilitate. Why do we facilitate the way that we do? What are those aspects of holding people's bodies that comprise this actual ability or moment of dying and being born? Okay, they're happening simultaneously in the process. And I didn't attend a workshop. I never had healers. I don't have gurus or teachers. I experienced this alone. And as I give it to others, so do they take it in. And it's not something that you learn. It's something that you remember, basically. So yeah, let's study facilitation based on these terms. Now, intuition wise, you don't actually need a training if you had the longest time to figure this out. Like you would find the structure. Okay, let's look at the structure. There's a structure here that you can extend into the sciences, what begins in the spiritual experience. One of the first things that you would discover is that there's something going up and then there's something going down. Now, when people think about the concept of Kundalini, and I have other concepts that I normally use. I don't use the word Kundalini so much. The Kundalini rising experience is quite central in a lot of people's terminologies and experiences. The thing we need to account for is if something goes up, then something must go down. Something falls. Something must collapse. And it could be the world around us collapsing. It could be us, the self collapsing. And this is what you need to account for. And that would enter into a design process eventually that helps you to perceive the nature of, the being, the self. And almost reverse engineering it, coming from the experience. How do you bring about, let's say, the ego death and the rising of the divine feminine from within? So first off, let's look at this from a sensory modality. What are the sensory modalities that come together in the process? So firstly, okay, you have someone in that position now. The most obvious is there's something about sound. So let's write down audition or the auditory. there still is something about the visual experience. So let's write down vision, where even though your eyes aren't open, in fact, closing your eyes already facilitates the visioning process. Like something starts to appear from within, and sometimes the colors and images actually seem a lot more vibrant than when your eyes are open. Now, one of the most important sensory modalities that you would be working with is the sense of positioning. And this is called proprioception. So literally just getting someone to lay down like this already facilitates the change that is about to happen, because changing the position of the body changes the position of awareness. You also have the psychological, which could be psychological. You would be addressing context so that when people enter the space, they wouldn't trust if there was no context provided. So what you speak is so valuable in the sense that they would take that with them. They would journey to either the personal or the cosmic, the planetary, depending on the context that you hold. It's going to be up to you. Now, there's something very interesting that I would say is the new thing that came into this body work that we manage, like in the inner dance. Kinesthesia has to do with body movement. And body movement is a sense unto itself, and it seems to facilitate transformation in such a deep way. I think there are some indirect sensory experiences that you may not facilitate directly, but indirectly they would come about. Like one of them would be chronoception, which is the sense of time. Like there would be a big shift in the way people sense time. Okay, so maybe let's just keep it short. We could just keep listing, but this is to say there are many conditioning trigger mechanisms that you can create in order to bring people into that space. So if these are what the senses would feel, see, hear, and so on and so forth, this is initially, this is the central framework. Something must go down for something to go up. You would need representations for what this is, what this could be. So let me see, let's resize this. This is the vertical representation, but you would need some sort of horizontal representation, because verticality is good at representing what moves through space, but horizontally would be what moves through time. So one way we've always envisioned this in the process is enshrined in the Vesika Pisces sacred geometry model. The Vesika Pisces is more technically this thing in between, the thing that's shaped like the eye, or the leaf of a plant that also absorbs light, but it's also the Mayan glyph for zero. The Vesika Pisces, for me, in a more meta representation, would be more of a helical model that would, so what you find there are many Vesika Pisces here, here, here. So basically what you're looking at is light. Light is something we use a lot more than energy, because light can hold structural elements, not just in spirit, but in science. So I'm pretty sure that maybe this has been spoken about in this training already, that probably, you can represent the masculine as that which goes down, the feminine is that which goes up. Light is an electromagnetic wave. And what I had shown you as the helix is light is electricity and magnetism turning into each other. Okay, so M here could even be mind, and electricity could be the feminine. the electricity rises in the body. You can call it kundalini, you can call it electricity. It's the same thing that does spread out, what people call activate. So we study how this happens, like how does the mind shut off? And the moment we're not thinking, somehow electricity goes up. Okay, mind goes down, electricity goes up. Now, these are very, very general and simplified representations. There must be more complex ones that we can study if we're going to become amazing therapists. Okay, so the inner dance modality initially was built upon the ability to stop, or better yet, to disrupt the mind or the mental functions of the person. So all these techniques to do with music, with asking people to close their eyes, to lay down, when the body begins to move, all of those have different reasons and formulations for how the mind stops. This is what you're doing. You're stopping the mind. And when the mind stops, electricity starts to rise up. Now, this is a limited description. We're not really here to stop the mind. It doesn't make sense to just stop the mind. That's not the point. Stopping the mind means you can't actually function out there. So what we're disrupting is more of the linear functioning of the mind. And in fact, we are turning on the mind. We're not actually shutting off the mind. Like in a much bigger sense, we are actually expanding the mind. We're extending the reaches of the mind. So don't be enamored by the wordings often spoken out there that, okay, the mind is evil, it's bad, you need to stop thinking. There is a much bigger mind that starts to think in brilliant, genius, and amazing ways. But in the beginning, we would study how to disrupt the line, and that is facilitated by none other than like time itself. So electricity represents more of space, primarily as it contains like a lot more information, dimensionally speaking. Now, time is actually space. Space in another dimension is actually time. Depending on where you are. When you are born, you are the becoming time of space. When you die, you will be the becoming space of time. So they are still like kind of turning into each other. Now, to make this practical, let's say, okay, I need to talk about this with doctors, medical practitioners, school principals, parents. This is way too abstract. Like I need to talk to a company and I can't, I need to come up with a company program, and I definitely can't mention Kundalini to the CEO to present to the board of directors. I need a scientific framework that could be explainable psychologically and biologically that bears representation. So to go a little bit more structural, you would look at the aspect of the body, the brain, the mind that handles electricity and magnetism like organizationally, and that's the nervous system. Okay, wait, that's the nervous system. But because of the level of complexity that you do have, trillions of cells, billions of neurons, you need to be able to harness all of this information according to the needs of the day, the week, the month, the year. So that which handles this the most is the autonomic nervous system. And it just so happens that the autonomic nervous system has two parts: the sympathetic nervous system, which is in charge of fight or flight, which we will just call fear states. And the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for resting, digesting, or trusting. So here you already have certain things to work with. The opening is this one right here, because a lot of people, when they walk into a room from normal conditions, say, okay, the banker walks in, The mom walks in, the teenager walks in. When they come in from the world, there's a lot of energy consumption, energy competition. There's a lot of struggle. So for this to give way, you need to open with trust. So let's say you get people to sit in a circle and you bring context, you speak the words. As soon as you ask someone to lay down, what is going to happen? Okay, when someone is laying down, normally their arms are at their sides. I think maybe their legs might even be a little bit contracted and not in a surrender mode. Now, the first thing that we normally actually teach in trainings is one of the most powerful things that you can do is to extend someone's right arm. Why is that? The right arm is actually an extension of, it could be an extension of the heart, but it's also an extension of this one right here, the left brain. Now, the left brain is in charge of like sequential or linear thought, just like how it is in language, where you can only express your meanings one word at a time. The left brain is very good at doing that. So historically, from an evolutionary perspective, it was just so much better to like contralateralize the brain so that the left has a certain function and the right has a certain function. Okay. Linear means one at a time. And the right brain, which defines our experience, is like everything's happening like all at once. Rather than sequentiality, it's about simultaneity. So then people would ask, okay, why then do you not extend the, sorry, go away, the left arm so much? It's because the right brain is normally already quite expanded, and it's the all at once brain. It doesn't need expansion. You would extend maybe the left arm if people were left-handed, because that means people's language centers are in the right brain. But most people, maybe 95% of the people in the world, they are right-handed. So it's already enough to extend the right arm. It opens up the left brain, and it opens up this very thing called time. Time becomes space. Now, going back to this, fear leads to sequential thinking. That leads to, we need to plan things out. We need to make sure that number 2 goes to number 3, number 4, number 5. Everything needs to be just in order. I can't allow for chaos. I can't allow for space. So clean up a bit so we can fit in more information. All right. So when you ask someone to lay down, and even with this right arm thing already, there are already chemistries that are leading to change. Like the trust chemical is this hormone that's sent out from the hypothalamic pituitary axis called oxytocin. If people aren't trusting, oxytocin is not produced or released as much. And if people are in trust, there's a part of the brain that starts to release oxytocin. Oxytocin is not just it's not just a love hormone. Actually, too much of oxytocin can lead to anxiety. But oxytocin in its certain amounts, in fact, leads to like contractions of the body. So when you see someone's body going into activations where like this part starts to go like wave-like, it starts to arch, and it looks like the person is giving birth or going through the motions of labor, because the process is like giving birth. So it's not all, but it's oft much to do with oxytocin, which could also be coming together with a lot of other hormones and neurotransmitters. So that could be a helpful tip. If people aren't trusting, then the fear is not going to the fear basically never disappears. It's just that the fear is always going to be there. It's just fear is going to transform into something else. Fear can become like an energy, information, and fear is actually like a superpower. So when fear begins to move through the body, then it's not fear anymore. It's always going to be there. It's part of the magnetism that keeps you on Earth, and when it moves through. So if we were to work with scientists, doctors, and they wanted an explanation, why is this happening? This inner dance, Kundalini, life force, energy thing. Your answer would be, what we are studying is how the autonomic nervous system's two major parts, being the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, when they simultaneously co-activate, okay, when they interconnect, a heightened sympathetic and a heightened parasympathetic. Um, One of our definitions, or my definitions a long time ago, and I was defining inner dance for people, it's the ability to be to feel fear without being afraid. Okay, it's the ability to be scared without being afraid. And then when you go ahead and do it anyway, you're now courage, even though you're still scared. So when we ask people to go into these conditions, we ask them to lay down. They're not as scared anymore, because when you are laying down, you release the parasympathetic nervous system's many chemistries, whether it be acetylcholine, whether it be oxytocin, whether it be serotonin, whether it be melatonin, that which you send out to bring people into the dream state. People aren't so scared anymore. That's why one of the most powerful things that have worked historically in the process is the demo. Like when you put someone in the middle of the room, as soon as you ask them to lay down, even if they're scared, because it's actually quite terrifying to be in the middle of the room and everyone's watching you. When they are laying down and when their eyes are closed, they're already sending out these chemicals. And, like the most powerful parasympathetic chemical is called GABA, and it has the ability to slow down brain waves, inhibit brain activity, and bring people into what's called slow wave sleep. Okay, so you can see how body positioning with the right music could already activate the parasympathetic nervous system, so that even though people are like scared, they're already trusting. They're already trusting you, the room, and themselves. And when that happens, then you come in and you now bring in the other thing, because you're not here just to relax people. If people wanted to just relax, then they should just go get a massage somewhere or drink some wine in Barcelona. You're not there to just get them relaxed. You're there to activate something, and that's called the sympathetic nervous system. So because we have this T word, we need another T word here. You can call that like the mechanism of the trigger. So there are many trigger mechanisms. Mostly a lot of people use sound. They bring instruments, but there are many other trigger mechanisms like touch, which is tactician, smell. Sometimes we would have blinking lights while people's eyes are closed, and that can entrain people into certain rhythms. Verbal cues, there are many trigger mechanisms, and when you enact the trigger mechanisms, that can in fact bring up fear states. So you can see that simultaneous co-activation. It's like, okay, I'm not scared, but I'm afraid. But because I'm not scared, then the fear is just something I'm looking at, and it starts to just simply move through the body, given all those. So this is your explanation to the doctors initially and to parents. Like when you perform the simultaneous co-activation, then something happens to the body that's quite unique. And for you to maybe have a more full backdrop of what that means, your next question would be, what are the moments when there is a simultaneous coactivation? Is that actually quite common, or is that rare? It is actually rare. An extreme or intense coactivation would happen during natural birth, the moment the baby is coming out. It can happen during death, most particularly to the moment where there is a life review. The coactivation actually explains why the life review happens. The life review is when you will see your whole life flash before your very eyes at the point of death. And that it only happens when people are extremely anxious, like, okay, I'm in panic, I'm in shock, I don't want to die, but there's no other point. I'm going to surrender, I'm going to let go. And suddenly you're having a near-death experience or an actual death experience. And even people who aren't actually going to die, if they go into that activation, they still go into a life review. This can happen in a spiritual awakening or spiritual transformation, because crisis can also force you to surrender, even though it brings you into a lot of critical like feeling states. The most common way people do the coactivation is through the use of hallucinogens or psychedelic. It's the easiest way, primarily because sympathetic nervous system is activated through stimulants, and the parasympathetic can be activated through depressants. And a hallucinogen or a psychedelic is a kind of medicine or drug that is both a stimulant and a depressant at the same time. Okay, you can also have the simultaneous coactivation when you have an orgasm. An orgasm isn't always pleasurable. It's actually pain and pleasure becoming one. Okay, so the most studied, I think, in the work that we do isn't even the spiritual awakening. The coactivation would happen in the REM stage of sleep, which is when dreaming occurs. When you dream, your body is paralyzed and is very, very relaxed. There's the part of the brain, the midbrain, and the medulla sends paralyzing energies to the rest of your body, so you cannot move. You literally cannot move. But when you study the brain is actually more awake than when you're awake. So when you're dreaming, you are in fact not sleeping. You're even more awake. So the reason why we sleep is to wake something up, and it's these. These are brain waves. These are chemicals. These are body, mind, brain, spirit functions, all going into the absolute communion between the north, the west, the masculine, the feminine, the cold and the hot, and the light and the dark. Okay, so this you can study, like in the long term, you can look for case uses, case studies, or you could just think about it, and even if it's not to study, it's really just to observe the experience. Like in the process, when you look at the music that is the most effective are both stimulating and inhibiting. Let's write that down, because those are two words to connotate the up and the down: stimulating and inhibiting. These are your two main roles. And I think somewhere in between these is the thing itself that we're doing. It's neither stimulating or inhibiting, and it's both stimulating and inhibiting. When people use the word non-duality, this is what it means. You don't know whether it's this or that anymore. It's both, and it's neither. The mind cannot decide. And so it just accepts all, and so this is what the autonomic nervous system signifies. The ANS, or the autonomic nervous system, is also the automatic nervous system. It's the part of your nervous system that you don't control. In a way, it controls your reproductive system, your sleep-wake cycle, your breathing patterns, your heart rate, your cardiac output, your blood pressure. It releases stress hormones, sleep chemicals at the right time. It especially runs by what's called the clock, which is called the circadian rhythm. So you don't control it; it controls you. But then when you study the use of music, especially, there are parts of the autonomic nervous system that's very sensitive to what entrains it. And if there are German speakers out there, which I'm sure there are, anything that you give the body that entrains it, that alters the Zeit, okay, that is called a trigger mechanism. A Zeitgeber is what you are. It's beautiful. You are not just healer, you are the giver of time. And this is actually what people are looking for. One of the greatest fears of man is I'm in a hurry, I'm busy, I'm late, I don't have enough time. I'm going to die soon. I only have this one life. I'm only human. But what is really the true nature of time? You know, kala. You give them kala. Kala is black time. That you are time itself. You will not die. You are immortal. And when you give that, not just as a concept, but as an experience, then you give them the universe. So anything that entrains the rhythms of the human or any organism out there, could be music, it could be you give them some like certain food, you let's say you make them drink some ayahuasca or like a bottle of wine or a lot of coffee, time is going to change, right? You give them a word that's like a bad word or a good word, you will alter their consciousness. Those are all Zeitgebers. So what we're issuing out then is that the autonomic nervous system is not just what controls you. There are actually things that control the nervous system. And when you put all those together, then you can affect the autonomic. You can affect the intuitive or the automatic. And that's what we have been doing all this time. So why is that important? What is the point in activating or influencing the autonomic nervous system? Now, for most people, what actually does control the autonomic nervous system is trauma. Because the autonomic nervous system's main functions would often be correlated with like stress response mechanisms, could be reward mechanisms. People are either pain avoiding or pleasure seeking. That's why they get out of bed. So when we speak about trauma, what controls your autonomic nervous system is your past. How you were exposed to danger or opportunity, what were your fears, what were you afraid of like in the past, and that then programs or conditions you so that let's say just looking at your heart rate, like your heart rate, your blood pressure, when you see someone who triggers you, it could be a certain person, it could be your mom, it could be your dad. Okay, here they come again. Or it could be just your boss. Then your heart rate goes up. And that doesn't just need to be with fear. It's like you're excited to see someone, then your heart rate goes up. So you can see we're not ourselves. We are a product of our environment. It's not just nature. We are nurtured by our childhood experiences. So this is already able to explain why are we doing this. If the autonomic nervous system is the part of the nervous system that organizes our reactions or also our responses, the ability to become responsible is the ability to respond well. And a lot of people are not able to react in objective ways. They hear something, they see something, and then either they go into fight or flight I need to run away. I need to fight back. I need to the ability to respond in an objective way, in like a slower way, in a healing way, means that this doesn't need to hold us anymore. You know, so change can happen when we react differently, and that's one of the main feedbacks that you will receive. That what used to scare me isn't scaring me anymore. I used to get triggered by my boss or triggered by my small child crying like that. I seem to have a heartbeat and brainwave activity and breathing patterns that's able to take it. So you can see the point. That's just one aspect of the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system is also comprised of the somatic nervous system. So if some people ask you, or you yourself are asking, how does inner dance compare to breath work or yoga or exercising? The somatic nervous system is the part of your nervous system where you can control your muscles, your tissue, your anatomy, where you can express your will. That's really more of like acting. Autonomic is more of like reacting. So I think both are important. I don't think people should let go of the disciplined uh, part of the nervous system. This is the masculine. The somatic is the masculine, and then the feminine would be the autonomic. I think you need both. You don't just want to become an automatic person. You also want to experience your own sovereignty, where you are acting from your own wisdom and not just from what's happening in the room. So don't get too attached to the work that we do. It is not everything. It has its gifts, and a lot of it has to do with teaching people to be okay with everything, just to be at peace with the whole universe, whether it be like the nasty parts or the wonderful parts. Okay, so you started to go into the circadian rhythms. Now, what is the point there? Let's we know about the up and down. That's the vertical. The true horizontal would need to incorporate like change that happens not in space but in time. So this is the map. This is the framework. Technically, this is what we call the inner dance playlist. The inner dance playlist has been around for don't know how many years now, 15, 16 years, which is a way of organizing sounds, music, silence, and noises that influences the brain states, delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma, all of which have different hertz frequencies. So a playlist allows the up and down to happen, not just simultaneously at the same time, but for that to take place over time. You know, like there's this forward arrow of time, according to the philosopher Albert North Whitehead. So a playlist organizes that, but it's very important to understand the playlist isn't musical. The playlist exists inside the body, which experiences something akin to a kind of clockwork. So this is the clock. The frequency levels would be the vertical, and how it changes over, let's say, this time of the day. Let's say 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock, noon time, 6 noon, all the way to midnight. There are these changes that take place. So this doesn't need to be just a circa DM or circadian, like the 24-hour clock. In Europe, you also have the circa annual, which means it's also the 12 months of the year. It's the seasons. So there's something in your body and mind and brain that needs to organize your systems, because you have this and then you have that. And it is true that there are certain parts of the world where there's often more of this in certain times of the year than this, and vice versa. I live in a part of the world where the light and dark is always the same, exactly the same, 12 months of the year. So what you're doing in the playlisting process is you're actually condensing either a whole day into an hour, or 12 months into an hour, or a whole month into an hour. The stages of non-REM 1, non-REM 2, non-REM 3, and then going into REM state. This is the playlist of the body. And when you create music, you are mimicking the stages of dream. So what you're seeing here, this is just one sleep stage. And every night you might go through 5 or 6 of these. You might have 5 dream levels, like in Inception. You might have 5 dream cycles every single night. And depending on when you wake up, sometimes when you wake up, say you wake up in non-REM 3, that means you will wake up and your body is paralyzed. That's because you're waking up during slow wave sleep, which is when you are closest here to delta state, which is the slowest brain wave. But sometimes you wake up and there's so many dreams happening. It's because you woke up here. This whole region is like REM. And REM is basically, to define it, it's the higher frequencies and the lower frequencies taking place at the same time. This should already explain something to you by way of what we're managing in terms of the conscious and the unconscious. Now, most people, when they are awake, we are here in beta state. Either you're in lower or higher beta when you need to focus, need to go to work, drive your car, you need to go to the bank or take care of the kids. But when you dream, the reason why we dream is this. We are actually trying to reach the higher vibrations. There are brain waves that are higher than gamma, and they would be called higher oscillating frequencies. It's that which goes above 100 hertz already. Beta would peak already at only 30 hertz. So you can see that when we go to sleep, we can raise the vibration, and then when we wake up, we actually need to lower our brain waves, because otherwise we would be too overwhelmed. And then back you go to sleep again. And the irony there is that for you to reach this high, you actually need to go low. Okay, so that's the reason why it's shaped like this. Something wants to drop here, but interestingly, in N1 and N2, you're not able to drop yet, because there's a lot of tensions that people had absorbed during the day, during wake state. There's a lot of stress mechanisms still in the body, so you actually need to rise up, and then you need to fall. So when you design a playlist system, something starts slow, rises up, and then goes back down again before it goes wild here in this REM state. But basically, this is what the dream is. When you go to the dream, what you're experiencing is actually like a lot of theta, delta, and gamma, HOF coinciding at the same time. You know what I mean? Meaning you're now co-activating slow and fast oscillating rhythms, very, very fast neural oscillations that are being coupled or gated by very slow neural oscillations. And when that goes together, it sounds really confusing, like, oh, wow, it's slow and it's fast. My body is paralyzed, but now I'm channeling very high frequencies, low amplitude, high frequency brain waves are now passing through me. That is when healing, higher metabolism, like immunity, that is where information processing would happen when very fast is taking place. But in fact, to go fast, you need slow. You can't go fast without slow. So what you give up when you wake up is you actually need to give up the slow, and you need to give up the fast altogether. And then on and on you go, like a cycle. Okay, now I wake up again, and then I have to get rid of slow and fast, and then I dream again, and then I have to go into the fast and slow again. So I hope this defines to you that, okay, just to give like clear context to this, according to psychology, there are these basic states of consciousness, which is oh, what are you doing? Uh-huh. Right. Okay. All right. There's wake state. There's basically three. There's wake state, uh, and then there's non-REM sleep, and then there's REM sleep. So were you to define the inner dance, the altered state or expanded state of experience, you're actually adding another state. And you might call that wake REM. Okay, so if you woke up while you were dreaming and you were still sleeping, but you were awake, and it's not lucid dreaming, you're not just lucid dreaming, you would experience what we are experiencing now. So that's our main formulation. That's our hypothesis. This is our theory. We are activating dreaming so that, let's say, that's what happened. When we grew up and we became adults, we forgot to dream. So you are unlocking the dreamer. You're actually teaching the dreamer how to dream again. In case in point, when we were children, we were actually more in the REM state, even when we were awake. So especially in like childbirth, when we were in the womb of the mother, we were dreaming a lot. Like especially in the last week of gestation in the womb, the baby would have been sleeping 95% of the time, and that 95% of the time, the baby is dreaming. So right now, as an adult, you are, let's say, how much do you sleep? You sleep 30% of the day, but in that day, you're only experiencing, some people experience only 15% REM. Some people could experience 20 to 25% REM at the most. Maybe 25 is already quite high because you're awake, you're worried, and you can't really dream anymore. So what we're training people is to dream. You can call it what you want, but this is technically, logistically, what you are doing. Yeah. So I hope this is clear to you. This is discoverable. If you did this long enough, you would figure this out. If you also borrowed certain things from the sciences, and you would end up like with this. I would share with you maybe, let's see. Okay, it's so here's the history of the inner dance process. In my realm, it began here. Back then, we didn't even have a name to call it. We didn't need to call it a name. But then it was coming out in newspapers and magazines, and people wanted to write about it. They wanted to organize workshops, so we had to come up with the inner dance. There was silence. I didn't need music. I could communicate already the energy, and already people were experiencing this. Now, there was a reason why I used sound. Now, my mom gave me a gift. I was this, like I was this person on the island who's like a monkey that just came back to the world, and my mom gave me an iPod for Christmas. This changed everything. Like from here to here, it's not that big of a jump, but it was very powerful. So a lot of people would ask, why do you use music? Could you do this without music? The answer is yes. But without music, when I was here, I wasn't able to sustain the process as long as it could now. Like there are some communities that actually facilitate like 12-hour inner dance journeys. If you ask me where that is and you want to go, that's in Lithuania. They have these 12-hour inner dance sessions. I don't know how they do that. It was music that helped me to sustain the energy a lot longer. And the other thing was when I was working with people, I was working with them one-on-one. So music helps to scale in a way that you can work with hundreds of people all at the same time. So it freed me up. Before that, I was literally like working with one person at a time. They would line up, they would treat me like a healer. So there's something in that as well, in the way that music actually created the conditions where people became their own healers, rather than this being like a master, disciple, guru, teacher, healer, student dynamic, which I don't adhere to because I never had a teacher. The music helped people to heal themselves. It became a lot clearer that way. So there were so many stages whereby uh, technology was quite basic back in those years. So I literally had to find the right music, the right songs. I had to do it slowly, and I had to look at the conditions inside each song that would do it. And those were shared across the world, where most people in the world had the same inner dance playlists. There was a time when we weren't even using music anymore. We were using the spoken word. Then I realized that there was something important in terms of um, putting layers, like simultaneity rather than sequentiality, that then shifted into the digital mixer from the analog mixer. What was important was the feedbacks kept going into depth, into breadth, into like vastness, and coming from here all the way here, it seemed like such a jump. It's almost already a decade. I went to a long retreat. I wanted to understand some of the imbalances that I was seeing in people's bodies. And I ventured here where I stopped using music and I just took sounds from nature. I would, I'd take sounds from the ocean, from the mother's womb, like Serena. She took sounds from the universe and from the cave. And then we were creating these playlists. The difference here is this. Coming from here, which was song-based, a lot of the experiences were usually like very personal. When we shifted here, the experiences weren't personal anymore. They were the impersonal, like the planetary or the cosmic. People weren't stuck in their stories anymore. They weren't looping around the same trauma, the same problem. They weren't just repeating the same experiences over weeks, months, or years' time. They actually could borrow resources from the planet. People became the planet. So that was really quite important and just breathtaking. So at that point, we just stopped using music altogether. We were just using noise. Now, because of the whole Kundalini activation process or CAP thing that popularized the energy once again in the mainstream, I guess this is so much more accessible. So a lot of people right now, they're using Spotify, and in a way, as CAP's foundation is still inner dance. Like it really just came from the same workshop journey scenario. Then it actually brought things back to the old ways we were facilitating inner dance many years ago. So CAP was actually the old inner dance style that we had started to shift by 2017, because the main founder of CAP, Venant, he really was just coming from that experience, and that became the norm. So a lot of the experiential feedbacks were quite similar to the feedbacks that we were getting in the early years. We didn't stay there in the noise app or deep story. We went into learning how to create the playlisting at home in studios. This was during the pandemic, especially, and there's something very deep about that allowed us to get freed up in ways that's hard to to think about now, but it's just very deep. So this is my studio. It looks quite. This is a picture taken 2 years ago, so it looks a little bit different now. But we're now experimenting a lot with electricity passing through the brain. So we're working with synthesizers, drum machines, and whatnot. And there are really interesting feedbacks that we're getting that are very relevant, especially to medical practitioners. Now, this is the most powerful that we're in fact studying right now. In fact, I created a sleep playlist some weeks ago or months ago, a month ago, that was going to be central to the work, and I didn't like the way it turned out. So there's someone in Barcelona yesterday who opened up his Logic Pro, took my synthesis sleep playlist system that we're giving to a lot of doctors. We're launching programs with companies and doctors that's applying the circadian rhythm entrainment into 1 to 3 hour playlists that companies and mothers for their children, people who work like in companies and so on and so forth. We've been launching this slowly over the year, and just the feedbacks have been amazing. There's a lot more effects in the sleep playlist than the wake-based processes in the long term. It could be more slow acting, but it's very long term, like long lasting effects. So this needs to be talked about and understood. There are sciences that revolve around the conversation. Okay, so we're still at it. Let's go back to the screen. Let's see. I want to maybe explain how the workshop was initially first realized. Like, why do we do what we do in the workshop space? There's actually a reasoning, and it's not just energy based. So we talked about the thing that falls down, right? Like the thing that goes down, which is the disruption. You're there to disrupt or to interrupt, or maybe even to erupt. Rupt means to break. Something's got to break. Break down, break through, break in, break out. So let's study this. There's something about the first law that was determined or determinable in the process that we call the law of contrast. Now, it's very tempting to, let's say, isolate certain conditions that lead to the awakened state. So let's say, okay, what kind of music can you outline that would really do it? It's not actually ever been that. It's about the movement from one to the other, basically. It's the space in between. So let's say this would be slow and this would be high. Could be no, slow and low and high are contrasting. It would be slow and fast. That would be contrasting. So there's something in the way you activate the sympathetic and parasympathetic in terms of moving from one to the other, or even like playing them at the same time, that actually creates that heightened response ability, that middle space. I want to give you the neurological backdrop to how that actually works. So let's think about the self. How do you like contain a self or hold yourself together, either as an image, as an ego, or as an identity? There has to be a self-referencing function in yourself. So we can understand that psychologically. There are symbols, thoughts that you maintain, but we can look at this from the chemical perspective. Like when you think of the neurotransmitter that's often the most talked about brain chemical, like dopamine. Dopamine has some responsibility over maintaining the self. Now, dopamine is normally associated with rewards, mechanisms. The mesolimbic pathway is about addiction, getting what you want rather than what you need. But dopamine actually has a role in maintaining like the structure of the self, and it's sent to several parts of the brain that maintains that you are you. Okay, like you need to send out dopamine to the part of your brain that manages like thinking or thought, continuous thought. That's called the prefrontal cortex, which could be the dorsolateral or ventral medial prefrontal cortex. There would also be the no, let's simplify this, not give you the brain terms, but what they do. There would be memory, and that's the hippocampus. Dopamine gets sent there so that you are able to situate yourself in the memory of the moment. You know, you're always comparing yourself today with yesterday. Is it okay? Do I understand this in reference to what I already know? And then motor programs would be about it would be in the nucleus accumbens. That's too long. Nucleus accumbens. Dopamine needs to get sent there. And then you always are seeking to feel good, to feel balanced. So that's the amygdala. So the inner dance was first founded on breaking the sense of self. For the sense of self to leave the building. Say you're Elvis and you're leaving the building. Dopamine actually needs to get rerouted into somewhere else, and that is the basal ganglia. And if you want to understand what is the basal ganglia is it's the old brain. It's the animal brain, the instinctual brain, what they call the reptilian brain. So if dopamine isn't going to go through all these, it's released through the ventral tegmental area. It goes to the old brain, and that would shut off what used to be like thinking. Reroute dopamine, and you would go here to the basal ganglia. And the basal ganglia holds autonomic control over the body. And one of the things it controls the most is the perception of time, which otherwise would be called a dimension. So when you reroute dopamine, you actually bring people into other dimensional states. So this is a technique. Don't get lost here. When you shift from, let's say, you start to slow, and then you start building up the music on the next phase. And then you build it up even more. But then suddenly you drop it. In the dropping, there is what is called a shock or an unexpected thing. Every time you are in expectation, dopamine would go into its usual wiring mechanisms. So what a facilitator does is, and you know this is not always good, when people come into a workshop space and they are expecting, then very often nothing's actually happening. It's because people weren't able to reroute dopamine from, these are new brain centers. Okay, a lot of these belong to the neocortex. And for you to stop thinking, to go to the old brain, there needs to be a rerouting of dopamine into the basal ganglia. And your role is actually to break expectation. Okay, so you will find ways to do that by creating changes or switches in the mechanisms that would then go into all sorts of sequential or simultaneous co-activations of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, therefore confusing the part of the body that's processing stimulation and inhibition. So this explains a lot why people do what they do. The reason why there are the changes that take place in the process is actually accredited to this rerouting. This rerouting is the first foundation, like in the process. So there are chemistries of transformation for sure. Now, this is not the only mapping. There are many mappings already that have been understood. And I think if I was just to simplify that today for lack of timing, the model of the playlist is in fact chemical in nature. This is what a playlist might look like. So in the beginning, for you to allow the energy to fall down, like the moment you ask someone to lay down like that, there's a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. So let's say this is you, that is very connected to the third eye, which has a scientific name. It's called the pineal gland. The pineal gland is signaled by the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus to release a chemical called like melatonin. So as soon as you ask actually someone to lay down, to relax and to close the eyes, even though it's not yet like this time of the day, even though it's still like this time of the day, you can already send out melatonin that's actually synthesized from serotonin to be released, so that even as you allow the energy to rise up and later fall down and rise up again, you're already allowing someone to enter more quickly into the REM state. So all of these are normally coordinated by a kind of clockwork mechanism, but you're actually disturbing or interrupting the clockwork. If your goal was to bring people into wake REM states, then there are these chemicals like epinephrine, which is adrenaline. There would be acetylcholine. There would be serotonin. There would be oxytocin. There would be what else is there? There would be norepinephrine. There would be yeah, like melatonin. Like with the understanding or without the understanding, when you allow this to rise and fall, especially cortisol, when you allow the energy to rise and fall down in succession, and also sometimes you're going to mix things up, especially in REM state, the timings of these get disrupted. You're interrupting the timings of this, and the brain state is going to activate in a way that's where the electricity would therefore spread out. So just to visualize what this looks like, specifically, this is the first thing that you're doing. This is the old brain. Okay, the old brain would be composed of the subcortical parts. The striatum would be the caudate and the putamen. So all of these manage time. They manage energies, like primal energies in the body. Hippocampus is memory, and amygdala is emotion. And when you activate the brain like that, then what you would send out would be light and electricity, and then this is where they would pass through. Now, this is the corpus callosum, one of the many nerve tracts upon which the energy travels through. So if you study the new brain, let's put the covering in the brain, the cortex. It's the outer layer, right? The brain, the gray part that's visible. when you study the brain, there's actually two brains. They're bilaterally separated. There's two brains. So for one reason or another, the human became smart by separating the functions of the brain so that the left might contain more the language functions, and mathematics, music would be more in the right brain. So to bring the brain back to its old ancestral ancient structures, they need to communicate. So when you expose them to music, lying down, so on and so forth, you start to send out light through these bundles of axons. So when people say activation, the accuracy there in neurology would be you're spreading electricity between either the hemispheres of the brain or the different brain regions, whether it be the frontal, the parietal, the temporal, and the occipital, all of which have responsibilities in this is visioning. When the body is moving, the activations are happening in the primary motor cortex. When the eyes are beginning to move, it's the frontal eye fields. When you're beginning to feel sensations, it's in the parietal lobe. Emotions, sound, and smell, memory, it's here in the temporal lobe. So there's a whole reason why we use certain musics or touch certain parts of the body, because all of those techniques can activate either this, either this, either this, or either this. So if the body's moving too much, you actually decrease the chances when visions might appear. So when people get stuck in like the motor functions because they want the so-called kundalini to arise, you actually block off a lot of information flow that can spread across the back of the head. And this is because this is where thinking stops, but a lot of higher intelligence takes place between these three. So don't be attached to the movements. A lot of the most transformative experiences actually happens when the body isn't moving anymore. The movements though are openings. So starting with here, that is okay. This is the controlling aspect of the brain, the frontal cortex. It's just a, let's say once that opens and then that co-triggers with this lower part, for example, that's emotional. When the energy then moves here and then the body is still moving too much here and they're activating each other, there are parts of the frontal cortex that's not able to modulate emotions, and that could lead to a lot of ego and a lot of addiction. So it's very important to keep changing the energy in a way that maybe you speak certain words, verbal cues are important, helping people to image. But the most helpful would be the most relaxing, slow wave energies in between a lot of the stimulating music that a lot of facilitators tend to choose. Okay, so back to the tracts. So this is the Kundalini. I'm showing it to you. That's the Kundalini, and it's not just that. It's all of these. These are communication pathways for light, information, and electricity that travels. So musicians would have thicker arcuate fasciculus because this allows the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area to communicate. And when you do expose people to a lot of music in the sessions, this tends to become thicker in some people. And that could lead to better understanding. You know, people can comprehend spoken words and music and vibrations a lot more. So we are evolving over time. If you learn to balance the music and the styles that you use, you're actually going to end up with a thicker brain. You're going to bring people into higher intelligence levels. But yeah, you really just need to, I think, experiment, explore, use your intuition, and study a little bit more. Okay, so it's 5:30. Okay, I'm gonna stop here because I've been speaking nonstop, and I want to open up the space for possible questions that you might have. I think I might have already given you so much data information. I hope the English was understandable. So yeah, like anyone who would like to contribute, could be like an idea or a question. Thank you for listening.
So thank you, Pai. I'm sure there's people having questions. We already tackled yesterday a few. One would be about epilepsy and other stuff, but let's see now which questions are in the room. Yes. And then we can go one by one. We will invite people to be in front of the camera and talk to you. So the invitation is just when you have questions, just to sit down, say your name maybe, and then where you're from, and and then have the question.
Hello, my name is Katerina. I'm Czech living in Slovakia. Thank you for explaining all this. It was very useful for us, but I would like to ask you something different. Can I do cup and acupuncture together? I mean, if I pinch needles, can I activate them with cup? What would happen, or is it useful?
That's an amazing question, actually. Let me see. So I work with doctors. So you're an acupuncturist, yeah? Yeah. Okay. So I think it's amazing. It's a beautiful question. So let's go to the screen again, just so we can visualize this. All right. So it's very related to everything we talked about, actually. It's not like alien to what's already been brought up. So there's the process, you just called it CAP. I mean, what we're talking about is much bigger than Kundalini activation process. It's really a wave process. CAP is a brand that someone came up with that was modeled after inner dance. So, okay, we are studying wake REM, which happens when the body is moving and people go into the dream state. So what's really interesting about that is when you compare it to sleep REM, when you go to sleep REM, something needs to happen to the body before it goes into the dream. So let's say you have non-REM sleep. Something's happening in non-REM sleep that prepares us for this stage, and that's paralysis, meaning the body needs to be inhibited in terms of motor programs. You cannot move while you're dreaming, otherwise it would be really strange. In the wake REM experience, in the inner dance, the difference between sleep REM and wake REM is the body, as we see, actually goes deeper sometimes even when we're moving, which is beautiful. Now, my advice to the doctors that I've been working with, some of whom are practicing acupuncture, like in the Philippines, is when people are, let's say, okay, you have probably the massage bed, and then let's say you have someone laying down like there, and then let's say they have these they have these needles like all over, which is really cool, and I love acupuncture. When if you do acupuncture and they're really just there, like nothing's happening other than the acupuncture. You're working with the meridians, working with the points, you know, and the point is like energy flow. Okay. Why don't you add the journey process? You might actually be able to extend the acupuncture session. So let's say maybe you used to do 30 minutes. What if you extend that maybe a little bit longer than what people are used to, And then you would design a journey format that brings them into the different brain waves. So you would study how to start the process. I mean, your model doesn't even need to look like that. It could be just one wave, or it's how you would design how it would start and how it would end, depending on how you perceive a journey to be. Maybe a simplified would be like that, like super slow, rise up, and it all depends on the timing. So when someone is in because this is paralysis, people can't just move around when they have the needles stuck to the body. I've been working with doctors who are doing acupuncture for, let's say, like this amount of time. And what you call CAP, which I would call just the energy wave, let's say, or inner dance, which isn't about the movement. Because if you call it CAP and then you bring the correlations of Kundalini and the body needs to be moving, then you can't really direct that into an acupuncture session. But if the process is really just the energy wave, which in fact brings people into the dream state, then the acupuncture journey might even be more the acupuncture journey, not the session, would allow people to witness energy flow that's not just pure energy. They might go to like past lives, you never know. They might go to childhood experiences, all of which might be transformative and cathartic, but they would be safely held down. And I feel that this is actually quite good, because when Wakeram is happening and movement doesn't need to necessarily be there, there is there's a greater spread. Oh, lost the. Okay. There's a greater spread in the lobes, so that wait, okay. When the body is moving, a lot of the activations here, but I feel that the greatest transformation is when the energy moves to the back. So if you have the people paralyzed and you're conducting the energy wave that I drew for you, the whole body will be filled with energy a lot more. So in a way, based on the work that you do, you might actually be able to bring about greater healing, because you can bring the two tools together. Do you understand what I mean? Use just the musical part and then bring the acupuncture part is what holds them down into during
Yeah.
they'll go some places. Try it out, and I want to know what happens, so you can feed back to me. What do you
Okay,
think?
thank you. I just mean that if I send energy into just one needle, if it stays in that meridian or
Mm.
if it spreads all around the body.
Well, we're talking about the sound as that which holds the vibrations together. So the needle would facilitate the meridian flow, yes. But if you were bringing in the journey process, which is sound based, you're also talking about a more diverse and vast network that you could tap into. So maybe you could try it out with like a client that you're more comfortable with, and you base the feedback on that. I'm just going to tell you that it's been done before here in the Philippines. People have used acupuncture with inner dance music, and the things that happens in the workshops that are spread across the world, that's Kundalini, it's also happening in acupuncture rooms, and sometimes people are going even deeper. It's like bringing the two worlds together. It's actually exciting.
Thank you. May I have another quick question? People who suffer from diabetes, can CAP change dramatically?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
It's a yes, let me go back to the screen. It's all good. So yeah, like you're talking about diabetes. So I think we'll talk about the answer to this is actually quite huge. Let's use the chakra system initially to look at this. This is actually the endocrine system. So these are the endocrine glands that I'm mapping out. So let's say the red would be a certain thing, orange, yellow. So the yellow might be the adrenal gland. The yellow would be the gonads, the testes and the uterus. The red I'll skip for now. The indigo would be the pineal gland, and then this would be the thyroid, and then this would be the thymus, and then this, the thing in the middle is what's important. This is called the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Now, where does diabetes come in? It could happen here in the yellow or in the red. Now, the red for me is a question mark as to what the pineal gland, the endocrine gland there could be, but it could be the pancreas. But the pancreas could also be sometimes like here in the yellow. But for now, let's put it here. Now, pancreas is responsible for handling blood sugar levels through glucagon and through insulin. So just to give confidence for those who want to work with diabetes, but it could well be cancer, it could well be almost anything else. The work that we do works in the short or long term because we're able to activate the hypothalamic pituitary tracts. Now, what do these do? The hypothalamus and the pituitary regulate all the other endocrine glands because we have studied the brain. And when you create changes in the brain, the changes can actually be very, it can be fast acting. You'll feel it right away, but the effects are very short term, meaning the changes don't last very long. If you want to really work with patients, people needing help, you want to work with the endocrine system because the changes might be slow to see in the beginning, but they will last a long time, long lasting. They last a long time, as opposed to just changes in the brain. Oops, yeah, that's okay. So when you expose people to music, both in the sleep programs and also in the kind of sessions that we hold, the hypothalamus is very, very sensitive to music. So music will either like activate or inhibit the hormones that the endocrine system uses to send messages to. Now, the pancreas would either excrete insulin when blood sugar levels are high, but when blood sugar levels are low, you would need glucagon to increase blood sugar levels. So instead of working on the pancreas directly, if you actually work with the hypothalamus, then you can heal blood sugar levels. But it's also because the other glands are responsible for addressing blood sugar levels, like the adrenal gland and the adrenal medulla is responsible partly. So they need to coordinate with the pancreas. The thyroid gland being responsible for metabolism did also need to work with that. And the thymus is responsible for immunity. So there needs to be hormones that actually still help the pancreas. So what you're doing is you're helping your whole body by going into where things need to be addressed first. The hypothalamus is the central governing gland that connects the brain with the endocrine system. Okay. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people aren't healing in that autonomic system is because when there's a lot of fear in people's lives in the long term, the hypothalamus is interconnected with the amygdala. As well, there are nuclei in the hypothalamus that stores like really old fear, like primal fear. Some of the biggest fears that we have, it's there. So when we are afraid, the hypothalamus is not able to do its job. Okay. So when we bring healing to people, we also heal these very important brain parts. And it could be through music, right? It could be through all the other things that we're managing, through touch, through the context that words bring. When people are healed in the central governing system, then it's going to send more positive messages to all these. And positive doesn't mean high or low, it means balanced. So when the body is balanced, let's say a lot of people with diabetes, it's actually a problem with diet, and people who have problems with eating, it's because it's emotional. So I think letting people heal with emotions will heal blood sugar levels, but it won't happen overnight. It needs to be continuous and very balancing.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank
well.
you. Okay. Next.
Hi. I had a question.
What's
So you
your
talked
name and maybe where you're
Um,
from?
I'm Citrine. I'm from the USA, but I'm living in Barcelona. So thank you for all the information. You talked a lot about like having energy rise and fall. And my question is like if I'm working on people and I notice that they're really activated, is my goal to try to do the opposite of what they're doing? I'm trying to like cause them to go back down. And then if they're really relaxed, I'm trying to get them to rise up. And how how long do I want them to stay activated, and how long do I want them to stay relaxed? And also, is it like something that will just kind of naturally occur with the music that I know it'll naturally happen like in the environment I'm creating with the music, but then also when I'm like touching them or manipulating the energy and stuff like that, I guess is more of what I'm asking about.
Okay. Okay, so let me go to the screen. We basically have a multi-stage process that occurs that defines the wavelength. So let's say satisfaction is where it begins, where like it needs to start with trust. But then you need to build the energy up. So when people get activated, sometimes they're here in the threshold. The threshold is like that's when people are just dealing with their shit, you know, like in Barcelona, their mierda. It's when people can't take it anymore, and that's usually a prior stage to the release or the purgation. That's when they start to take stuff out, you know, the garbage, all the crap in their system. That could be through crying, that could be through just the body moving profusely. Now, if you don't create a change in the process, so let's say you're just activating them because you're enamored by the release, it's like, wow, they're throwing stuff away. That could be really exhausting after a while. So that needs to be followed by a stage we call the disintegration. So you let them rest. You let them rest. And this mimics the non-REM 3 sleep stage that's in the circadian rhythms. You know, on the way to the dream, you go into non-REM 3, which is slow wave sleep. So have in your toolbox music that will just let them like super duper rest. And I think after you sense that they've been there, you can just explore and experiment. There's so many different stages we put out. But then, you know, before the real oneness is what we call it, unitive state, there's something called the dark night of the soul. So wait, let me make sure that I've got my screen. So it's a really beautiful question, so I appreciate this, and I would like to tackle it properly. Okay, so now you guys saw that there is a 12-stage format that many facilitators do follow. Say, this is what it could look like. This is, let's say, stage 1, you start out slow, and then you build up, and then this is threshold. And then people start to let go. So this is where it drops. This is what I called disintegration. They disintegrate into nothingness. There's no ego anymore. It's like, so then they would go up into the awakening, the illumination. And there are these confusing parts where they try to choose and then they fail and they receive insights. So they would drop here. This is number 10. And number 10 is called the dark night of the soul. Now, because we are in Spain today, dark night of the soul was in fact coined by a Spanish mystic. His name's John of the Cross, but his real name is Juan de la Cruz. And according to Saint Juan or San Juan de la Cruz, the only way you can go into oneness is to go through the DNOS, the dark night of the soul. So that's when this would be the unitive state. Let's maybe call this like oneness, the state of non-duality or oneness. So when you study this, okay, let's get rid of these terms because they're you can just intuit what those could be. It's just important to understand there could be a multi-stage process. When you notice this, okay, what they represent would be delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma. So when you're talking about rest would be available more in these lower regions, especially delta energy. Now, GABA is the neurotransmitter that really allows people to rest because it's the chief neuroinhibitor. Now, the opposite of GABA, and this answers your question, is glutamate. Now, glutamate is the excitatory neurotransmitter. It doesn't inhibit, it actually stimulates. So a lot of the activations people are feeling, it's because of glutamatergic activations. Now, truly, honestly, if there's too much glutamate in the system, it will lead to some problems, anxiety. It's actually a poison, and too much glutamate can lead to death. It's not good. So there has to be a GABA glutamate balance in the body. So there are many facilitators in the world, in inner dance and Kundalini that are too glutamatergic. They're really activating too much. Their goal is, I want to make it as high as possible. And when you check their playlist, there's not enough inhibition there. So it's either you would then know where to inhibit. It would be in the beginning to facilitate trust. It would be here in non-REM 3 SWS, slow wave sleep. It would be in the dark night of the soul. Before they enter into joy, let's say here's joy, they enter despair. Let's say before they enter into courage, they enter into fear or forgiveness, anger first. And a lot of those might be happening like in all these parts. So there would be contrast. So you're giving them a chance to experience all these emotions before they go into oneness. So that's why the number 10 is still like drop down, like delta state. And then here you basically end how you started, because you started by facilitating like trust, right? You start very slow. So you open the space, and when you close the space, you actually still create the opening. So when you look at this, you have these 4 drops. We call them the delta drops. Number 1, number 5, number 10, and number 12. And that would ensure that if you will stimulate, you will also inhibit enough. You will create not just a glutamatergic, but also GABAergic set of like mechanisms like in the body. It can't get more specific than that.
Thank you.
Oh wait, here's one other tip. That is not actually the only style. Like you can also, let's say, because we are using music, let's say you come up with like a playlist system that's quite chaotic, like whatever you want, like over there. what you would do is you would create like a foundational base, like something very slow would run underneath. And that's where some of the instrumentations would come in. So let's say, could you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So there's really just so many ways. It's either you come up with a DJ app, or Siegfried could, while there's time, talk about the noise app, where like somewhere in the background, even as you might come up with more like triggering, something wrong with my thing. Let's say you have all these playlists that are very triggering. What you need is something at the base, something that's either like white noise or binaural beat, something that would hold a deep structure underneath all the like with a high, you're holding something low. The body would already know that you're keeping something safe there underneath the ground. That's another way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Pai. My name is Bruna, and I'm from Brazil.
Mm,
And I'd like to understand a little bit better about light language.
mm. Oh, yes, let's do that. Thank you. That's one of my favorite topics. So, all right. There's something wrong with my cursor. Okay, so light language happens firstly, like it begins when you start to send out a lot of electricity. So what you're actually inducing in people's brains is epilepsy, because this is how epilepsy works. When you have simultaneous spread of electricity through the brain, you have an epileptic seizure. Now, when you spread electricity through the different regions, there are functional areas of the brain that's affected. And one of the first is this part over here. This is called the Broca's area, and it's responsible for language production. So when you remember like the corpus callosum. So when you have all this electricity there, you actually start to wipe out a lot of information that's linear and language, like verbal. Like this is the part of the brain that manages language production. And this is the part of the brain that manages language comprehension. So it's not just light language that comes up. You actually have people either going into a hyper understanding of everything that they're hearing, or it could go the other way. It could go south. It could be like, I don't understand what they're saying because it's so limited what they're saying. So Broca's area has two possible extreme manifestations. When you send so much energy and electricity through the brain, it's either you speak in light language or you cannot speak at all. And that's called aphasia. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually quite a beautiful thing. The reason why light language is happening is because we're becoming like a child. And then we're speaking like children, like babies. Now, babies utter the 800 phonemes that make up every single human language. So we think babies are stupid. They're actually speaking the universal meaning, where like meaning is not limited. So when you enter that state, it's very, very powerful. In fact, the person who I experienced the most light language in the world, who really demonstrated the biggest awakening process, is Brazilian, and she lives here in Maya. She went into light language for a very long time. Her name is Grazielli, and something comes with light language. I'd like you to observe it. It's very, very powerful. Now, no, the screen, yes. Okay, so can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So light language is accompanied by something else. and you would want to use this. Now, let's say you were starting with normal language. Now, the way you would go with language has to do with this grid here. Now, this is space and this is time. Time is sequential, where things move one moment after another. Like me, I'm speaking one word at a time. That's how time works, right? Space happens in a way that's simultaneous. Everything's happening all at the same time, like all at once. So when you speak language, you might be speaking one word at a time, but there's something in your mind that's able to handle the whole meanings even without time. So that even before I spoke the first word, I already have completed the sentence. Like time is just a formality so that we can sequence. So when light language happens, we also shift across time. Language is a direct descendant of causality. Language is causal. And causality is based on the forward motion of time. You know, like to be causal, this is the cause, and then something will happen called the effect. Now, in light language, the psychology and spirit that comes up is very, very different. What people experience in light language is called retrocausality. Now, I don't know if this is in your experience, but there's this feeling that something has already happened that has not happened yet. In the parts of the universe that are retrocausal, this is the cause and this is the effect. Okay, the effects precede the cause so that the answers come even before you ask the questions. And some people might just call that trust. It's like, I don't know why I need to talk to you or go there or do this. In a way, it's already happened, that which has not yet happened. So light language is an expression of entering into a deeper dimension. It's like a dream within a dream scenario where there's a lot more information packed into pockets of time. It could be the second or fourth or fifth dimension that you're entering into. So when you're in that state, you're not you anymore. You are what has not happened yet, and everything that might have happened, all communicating into the time-space continuum.
And for activate this exist a type of music, because with me happened once during, like, I've started with like a session, and after in an ayahuasca experience, and now
it's
right
common.
here during the trainings.
It's a brain state. It means that you are wiping out a lot of your old trauma and memory. And consequence of that would be the language centers of your brain. You're just changing. Light language is one of the manifestations of deep and very fast change. Language structures the consciousness, and for you to change your mind, you will not speak and hear the same way. So your language changing will be light language. It's like very fast change. So trust it. It's amazing.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Mariola from Poland. I have a question about psilocybin. If it's possible to combine during one therapy Kundalini activation with ceremony psilocybin? And this is one question. And another question, I'm doing a therapy, I'm taking microdosing psilocybin, microdosing. I stop now because of here. Should I stop because I came here for the training, or is possible too that I will take like I took every second day? This is my question about questions.
When this comes up, I don't want to have an official stand because in my younger years, I've gone through psychedelics, especially psilocybin. And I wouldn't be here today without the mushrooms. Because I was born into like Poland, you know, very conservative, very religious, very family. I've been watching the Polish body for a long time, and I understand the need to be more radical, be more explosive because of the fear and the attachments that people have. So I'm not going to say no to the intervention. It's just that I think if we were to bring this to others, we need to demonstrate it really well. Now, many doctors are now interested in the work that we do. Some think that this is the next step after psychedelics because sound as medicine is not invasive anymore. It's like you're not taking anything from outside. So I think you need to make the decision. But if I was to be invited to facilitate a ceremony and there are people there, I would still be interested in bringing in the sound would hold the process. And people would say, wow, that took me like so much deeper. And you just need to be careful so as not to associate the work that we do with psychedelics too much because there would be a lot of people who would not be okay with that. And it would not be helpful for you if the association gets stuck with you for too long and you can't get away from it. There will be a lot of people who won't be in the psychedelics, and you know if they learn that it becomes like too tightly wound together, they can't depend on each other because we do have to take in all of these feedbacks we received for so long that this is more powerful than ayahuasca. This is more powerful than magic mushrooms. This is more powerful than DMT. You can sustain it. You don't go through the crash afterwards. It's not expensive. It's free. It's working with what's already inside. I think the primary intuition would be the drugs are already inside. When you do take, like psilocybin, for example, is a poison that acts on the liver. And as the body starts to go through death, there's also a stimulation in the psilocybin that brings you up, but you're actually dying, and it brings you into the up and down, the rising and falling, and it's very, very powerful. But if you can challenge yourself just to do that with the music, I think it would be a lot more mysterious. I'm talking to you now more as a facilitator. You studying to facilitate. If you're not dependent on the psilocybin, you would believe more. But if you can see how that works. If people have a deep experience with the psilocybin, then they won't know. Was it the energy or was it the drug? Was it the plant medicine? And they won't go inside. You can see where you would lose even if they win. It's still a lose situation because you created the dependency. I think you would grow a lot more if you were in a mysterious, having to trust yourself, them having to trust themselves.
But for example, now it's okay that I stop the microdosing or no, doesn't matter.
If you're going to stop, then
I stopped
if you're
for last 3 days.
oh, so that's good. I would say just go for it. Base it on how you feel. If it feels good, but then if you end up like going back, then just go into a transition, go slowly as well. But I would advise maybe it's good to just stop because there's nothing like the natural, like being you, you know? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe one more.
Hi, Pai. My name is Teresa. I'm from the Czech Republic, and I would like to ask you if Kundalini activation could help people with neurodegenerative disease, because my father has sclerosis, and I'm wondering because theory of neuroplasticity says that our mind is still changing depending on our lifestyle, what job we are doing, etc., etc. And you also mentioned that during Kundalini activation, there is spreading energy between the left and right side hemisphere. So does it could influence somehow brain cells? I mean, neurons, axons, dendrites, etc.
Does your dad specifically have MS? It's multiple
Yeah.
sclerosis. Okay. So for this, we need to go back to the board. It's amazing how so many people now seem to have multiple sclerosis. Now, the answer is still going to be the same. The problem with MS is to do with myelination. The synapses are not myelinating properly. Like for those who don't know what myelin is, this is like a neuron, and here are the dendrites and the axons, and then they're meeting with other neurons. So the myelin would be the covering that allows the gray brain to become white brain. So MS is a problem with myelination activity. So myelin basically comes from oligodendrocytes. And oligodendrocytes are produced from prolactin. Now, here's the key or the answer to the question. Too much dopamine, like if it's much too active, it's like glutamate. If it's too stimulating, dopamine is also prolactin inhibiting. Another name for dopamine is prolactin inhibiting hormone. So if you activate dopamine too much for people with MS, it's actually dangerous because if already myelin needs to come from oligodendrocytes, and you need prolactin to be synthesized to become oligodendrocytes, then if you're activating dopamine too much, when you say kundalini, it's already connotative of dopamine, your prolactin will go down, oligodendrocytes will go down, and myelination will not happen. So you would still use music, it would still be interesting, but you need GABA and you need acetylcholine and you need a lot of serotonin in order to allow for the myelination, which is synonymous with what they need in the beginning is a lot of rest. So I think what we'll do if we're maybe doctors now is I'll send a file to Siegfried, and let's try putting him on the sleep playlist for now. 3 hours, right when he's about to when he's getting sleepy. Ask him to play it. I'll try to upload it to Spotify so it's easy to access, and then ask him to share with you maybe the next day, maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Like, how does he feel? Does he feel like stronger? And then just keep continuing it, and you might be able to assist the myelination activity. It's
Awesome. Thank you.
It's very, very specific. We can help for sure.
Yeah, and my another question would be about channeling, because it happened to me during two Kundalini activation, and I would like to understand it because my symptoms are that I'm speaking very, very fast, that I'm even able like to speak that fast way, and I would like to understand why it is happening, how it is happening. It's speaking to me. It says it's named Theo, don't know, and when I ask, it answers. Anytime during the day, during the night, I'm quite scared about it, but it's awesome at the same time. So
It's
I would
awesome
like
at
to
the
know
same
more.
time.
Yeah.
I love it. I love things like these. I'm not a believer of channeling in the literal sense. I believe that everything is an aspect of us. So like, I am Theo, you are everything else. Like Theo is inside you. So if you accept that, one condition I think we need to hold quite strictly when people enter our space is no matter what happens, you need to take responsibility. Everything is actually a creation of the oneness that we are embodying. So if you're already accessing that state, I think it means something. But to externalize that as another being that's coming from the Pleiades or planet Mars, then not only will there be fear, there will also be separation. And there could also be ego tendencies in that. So I think to understand the holographic universe, that we are all like mirroring a one being we call God and the goddess, it's not just safe, it's amazing. So channeling happens because of the speed in which we start operating. When you go into higher vibrations, which could still be neural, could be brain waves, but it could also be the energies of consciousness, then you are living in another time already. So if there's something speaking through you, that's you living in another time, channeling what you are not able to handle now. So there's two of you, and they're talking to each other. So if you develop a relationship and a communication process, it's really all just one. So that's a gift. Let's say, so if I have that, and if I'm facilitating people, I would have a notebook beside me. You will always get messages. Write it down. You will lose it after a while. You know how this works. And then when you're with people, you have the wisdom to know what's the right timing. How much information do I convey? How much permission do I need to ask that I'm not invading other people's information fields, that you're not just pushing, but if they're open, if they trust you, and if you're trusting them and there's trust in the space, the information will flow. But if you know, oh, there's a blockage, the word channel means an exchange of energy. So then you improve on that. Later, the archetype will not be the same. Maybe you won't need that anymore, and you're really just owning up that I have this ability to go beyond today. Like today is not today. Right now is not now. It's all of the days in the now, because we opened up the portal called the real. So go for it, for sure. Just keep trusting.
Wow, thank you so much. I would have so many questions about pills and medicaments people using, if it's can help prove their health, if Kundalini help people with a different disease, like when they are blind, etc., etc. But I know we don't have enough time, but it's awesome to see you. Thank you very much for all the information.
You're welcome. So I can give a general answer just so everyone would have a doorway into all of these. Science and spirit need to work together. Like they are coming from the same source, like our deserving to understand. So science is slow understanding, spirituality is very fast, and you want to hold both slow and fast. So the point now is to study, to really activate your third eye, your wisdom, your ability to be curious, to be in awe, to always be learning, is to develop plasticity. So you would grow like the earth, you would grow like the sun. You are the universe, and you'll grow like the universe, but you also need to be on earth. So one of the most interesting things that we've been doing over the years is to now translate the energy. So like in Europe, we are working with schools, with prisons, with addiction clinics. We're working, like in South America, it's the same. In North America, we're starting to really ground. Like in the Philippines, we're working with jails, with schools, with companies. We're working with doctors, with medical institutions. We found a way to not just let this be the weird, but to actually allow this to scale, and then to train the practitioners themselves of these disciplines to hold the energy in a way that now the process is inside curriculum. It's now becoming like medical protocol, like corporate healing process. But the manifestations of the energy would change depending on the audience and depending on the nature of the institution. So let this be a powerful opening, but don't stop being curious. Like keep growing in the energy, keep studying, keep learning. And I think you guys are in good hands with Sandra and Siegfried and the whole community over there. Just don't lose the trust. The trust will keep leading you. In the beginning, maybe you don't even need that much data because your heart wants to learn to find its own voice, but be ready for genius. Don't just be ready for awakenings and energies. Be ready for, if you're activating or lighting up your super brain, you're gonna use it. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Hope you guys have a good rest of the training. Love to Barcelona. Okay, I think we could close. It's already quite.
Thank you, Pai.
Thank you so much, Pai.
Second, yeah. We also may mention that, of course, all the people here who wants to go deeper can join you in the training via online, the inner dance intensive, or even having the chance to come to see you in the Philippines in the available time frames. So we will share the contact as well.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
and we have the community meetings as well. So
Yeah.
and the next,
definitely.
just as announcement also for this group, you will be with us already on Monday evening, 7 p.m. Central European time. So you are invited to join by Zoom. So that's another chance to see Pai, and there's tons of videos on Pai's channel as well. So we will share all of that information. And yeah. So where's Sandra? Here. Okay. So thank you very much for your time.
I hope it was good. Yeah, I had a good time. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Namaste. Okay. So I'll let you go. Bye.
Bye.